Well, you'll be pleased to know my comments will be brief. I'm going to vote against all of A to E. I'm going to start off with D and E, if I may, and pretty much adopt everything that Councillor Puel has indicated. I think there's some people here in council that don't have any understanding whatsoever about renting out a house to tenants because they've never had to do that. On the other hand, there's a lot of working families in Vancouver that do rent out part of their house in order to cover the mortgage. Those people, those citizens, those residents in Vancouver are a lot wiser than the councillors here in City Council that seem to think you just wave a magic wand as a landlord, get entry immediately into the house, and find out immediately whether or not there's a grow-up going on inside. Well, of course, that's absolutely not the case. If you get access, and I emphasize if, it's with 72 hours notice. And you're going to have a reason for having access. Even if you have a reason, even if you give notice, when you go in, how are you going to find out that there's a grow-up going on if it's not the sort of grow-up that we saw on the presentation today? What if it's a grow-up in a crawl area or an attic or an out of the way area of the rental area? Even with giving notice, you're still then not allowed to go literally snooping through every crook and cranny in the place that you're inspecting. So it's absolutely naive to suggest that a landlord would be able to do a lot about this even if he or she wanted to. Now, secondly, think about it from the economics perspective. If the repair bill is $50,000 to $100,000, no landlord in his right mind would be allowing this to go ahead consciously, knowingly. In any event, the cost of repair is the deterrent. The cost of the repair is 50 or 100 times higher than this particular fine, the $1,000. So I can't vote for D or E. That then means that if A, B, and C are to be approved, I'm asking the taxpayer to authorize an expenditure of $500,000 to deal with this problem. So I have to do what all good councillors do. You do as best you can in your mind a cost-benefit analysis. The cost is $500,000. In return, what does the taxpayer get? Well, if we are to accept BC Hydro's figures, there are roughly 12,500 grow-ups in the city of Vancouver. I'll use that figure as the median between the 10,000 and the 15,000. If we approve A to C today for $500,000 this year, and $500,000 next year, and $500,000 the year after, and on, every year we will eliminate 5% of the grow-ups. 600 of the 12,000. 20 years from now, if not a single new grow-up pops up anywhere, and of course that's not the case, but if not a single grow-up anywhere pops up anywhere, 20 years from now, $10 million from now, we'll finally be able to say goodbye to the last grow-up. Now, if I was your doctor and I was writing you a prescription, and the prescription was going to cost you $500,000, and it wasn't going to cure the disease, or even half the disease, but only 5% of the disease, I think you'd fire me as your doctor. The better prescription is the prescription offered by Dr. Councillor Bass. Eliminate all the grow-ups, not just 5% of them. Eliminate them all by getting the crime element out. And the way you do that is by decriminalizing personal use and small amounts of cultivation. I'm not an expert in this field. Those in Ottawa are. Maybe the number, and I'm only pulling a number out of the air, would be 4 plants. I don't know if that's the number or not. But if it is, you would eliminate overnight all of this problem. People that do use this particular commodity would grow what they need the criminal element would flee Vancouver faster than a city council meeting is adjourned when the public wish to speak to it, and we'd be able to get on to other items. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so the idea then on following your logic is to, when the grow-ops are appearing in residential areas and they're next door to your home, and you complain, we do nothing because we're not going to do anything. We have no means of going out and shutting them down, and the word goes out that we have no enforcement and no grow-buster operation, and therefore you can just have them everywhere.
If that's the answer.
There's nothing we can do for the poor citizen who's terrified this house is 5 feet away.
Well, I always appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. Let me tell you what the answer is. Prior to this program being established a year ago, for years and years, and forever after today, even if we reject this funding, there's always been the opportunity and the ability for the police to go in and close it down based on a complaint. So if I've got a complaint about my neighbor, and I can give enough evidence to the police, they go in. What we're doing today, if we don't approve today, that doesn't mean that the police are forbidden from pursuing crime, not the case at all. All that we're dealing with today is whether or not to add $500,000 to a budget that already exists to deal with crime.
Oh, that's
Okay, so they closed 607, and they'll be able to keep that rate up and never make any
Out of
end in that.
12,000.
Originally, we didn't have
Out of 12,000.
If we hadn't put the original money into this, which was around $700,000 14, 15 months ago, we wouldn't have closed 607. With the current resources and not having a specialized team focusing and concentrating on this, we would have closed maybe 10, and we've told the other 597 people that you're just going to have to live with it. We're not going to get you. You said 20 years. We'll get to you in 50 years. We really are ineffective, and we can't do anything about it. It's really meaningful. That's the problem. Councillor Clark.
Your Worship, I have a question here. I'm doing a little math, counting heads or counting votes, and I'm just wondering if D fails, then. Well, that's why I'm doing the math here. I'm just wondering if it is the intention of those voting opposed to it to, in essence, make it that there will be no Grow Busters program. And recognizing that at least where, in the east side neighborhoods where I've been, people have been very supportive of this, and they've been thankful for some relief because, as I said, recognizing that we've got a number of people perhaps from other neighborhoods, recognizing that this is a plague in certain areas of the city. And there are people who are very frightened. So I just raised that question. What is the impact if D fails, Ms. Robbins?
The impact is if council approves the first three, then the cost of continuing the program is going to be borne by the taxpayers versus by the property owners.
Right.
That's right.
So does the general taxpayer that they then must pay for the due diligence, which some landlords, not all, but some landlords are not availing themselves of. If you've heard some of the stories I've heard, with all due respect, it's not a nicely dressed couple coming in with 2 small children. Not at all. People are not giving ID, they're not giving names, telephone numbers, references, anything like that. And so I think that's been one of the concerns, is that there are people who do know, because normally that's something that you would ask for. Of course they didn't know about the damage that would occur. Of course that's not something that they intended to incur. The second question I had is with regard to whether or not legalizing or decriminalizing, pardon me, to choose the word that was chosen by Councillor Lewis, marijuana in this country. First of all, that's not something that's within our purview. If it is going to occur, it will take some time and be required by the Parliament of Canada. And if it did occur, and at such time as it would occur, would that in fact necessarily decrease the marijuana or eliminate the marijuana grow operations? Because at least I have been led to believe that some of the marijuana that was being grown here was being traded or sold for cocaine coming in from south of the border. And in fact it was going south, not simply for local consumption in Canada.
A large proportion of the marijuana grown is exported to the United States.
So therefore, if it was decriminalized in this country, that's not going to take care of the grow-up problem because it's an export crop? shall we say?
To a large extent it is.
All right, just to clarify, therefore, the points that have been made by Councillor Lewis are to some degree, I think, moot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Daniel Lee, okay, we're gonna have to get down. What are you pointing at? Daniel Lee's on. Okay, Ms. Rogers, just a sec. City Manager, just a comment.
I did want to make a comment. I would just like to let council know that this whole Grow Busters project has been a partnership and a community initiative that has grown out of our community police offices. This has been the community itself, and let me highlight Collingwood Police Office as the place where the community has been very active and taken initiative to put this forward. I think if we were to do a profile, and Inspector, maybe you could talk to this a little bit, that many of the owners are common owners, the people who provide the rental stock. There is a pattern that is occurring in our city where there is an owner that owns multiple houses that are available for grow-ups. That's some of the kind of tracking that we're doing. So I really ask for council's consideration. This has been very effective. It has been community initiated. It has brought a cross-departmental team together, working in a very profound way and making the community citizens feel very strongly in a safer kind of way because there has been that partnership. So as you move through to consider these motions, I would ask you to remember the background to the development of this program and where the costs actually should lay.
You've got a $250,000 to $350,000 property and home, and you're talking about and rental of $1,500 a month or more, sometimes in cash, and we're talking about $1,000 here. This is not big money. This is, I think, very appropriate. This is where the funds should come from to respond to the public's demand and to the safety of our citizens, and not have all the other taxpayers of the city have to share it. Okay, I've got a speakers list. Councillor Bass, and not more. Councillor Lewis, Daniel, come back. Just a sec, I gotta go back to Councillor Daniel Lee for a minute. He got cut off and this light went out. Okay, Councillor Daniel Lee.
I will support A, B, C, but I will not support D. I have problems because of the landlord being penalized twice because he has to pay off all the damages. I do agree that the landlord does have his or her responsibility to screen out the clients. I do respect that point. It's sort of set out a funny analogy. I understand we are a lot of time we're on the user paid. So in the police perspective, can we tell the banks to pay for the cost for the police to catch the robbers? Or if someone leaves the door open, can you blame the house owner? They're saying you leave the door open, it's your fault. Then you pay for the cost of the police to catch the robber. So it's not exactly the same, but I have problems supporting D.
Okay. Councillor Lewis?
I'm going to pass.
Okay. Next, Councillor Pure.
I think it's a mistake to jump to the extreme. I said I was against penalizing the landlord. I'm for the grow-up operation. I think it should continue. I think the monies, the cash that you've recovered should be utilized in this program. But I think with the charge that you're doing right now with the $700 and the $400 for the permit, the additional permit, I think is as far as I want to go in that regard. But I think that we've subsidized other operations, many other types of operations, and we can affect through all of the rest of our licensing program, we can afford to operate this one at a slight loss. I am in favor of the grow-up operation. I think it's necessary.
Okay. No more? Yeah. Very quickly? Very quickly, okay, because it's 4 o'clock. We have to move on now.
I'd like to recognize Councilor Lewis's point, and we don't have the information. How many, before this, before the Grow Busters came along, how many busts did you make per year?
The year 1999 was the last complete year before the project was initiated, and they busted 212 in the entire year. This year, we had done 212 in the first 4 months.
So basically tripling it, just tripling it. So this increases the rate by about 400 per year. So the question is do we commit $500,000 The other part of that is, what does the Grow Busters do that you didn't have before, apart from having staff?
Staff.
How does it facilitate the increased yield?
The increased staff, of course, but also the fact that they are particular about which premises are where charges are laid, because it's a very intensive investigation to take it all to court. If you're not laying charges and you're simply closing more houses, then you get 2 more houses because you're not tied up in the investigation that you would need to take the case to court. So they're making an examination and making a determination on which cases will be charged, and the serious ones are laying charges and the less ones they're not.
And then the fraction is about a third? Or?
No, it's we're laying 17% of the cases, as I said, charges are being laid, and I'm not certain what the percentage was before the program.
Sorry, 17% of the 607
Charges are being laid.
charged or laid, and that's approximately 100. So that answers part of me. 17% of 600 is about 100. 30, 60, yeah, about 100. Okay, so now we got an idea of how many. That's 100 out of 600, ballparking it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to call the questions on this, and we'll take these separately. I think we should support all the 5, A, B, C, D, and E that Councillor Kennedy moved, but we'll do A, B, and C separately. All in favor? Contrary? Carried. You're opposed to A, B, and C? Are you opposed, Councillor Bass? No, I'm going to go with A, B, and C. Okay. All in favor of, do we take D and E together? Yes, we do. D and E together. All in favor? Kennedy, Price, Owen, Clark. Opposed? The balance are opposed. The vote is 6-4.
I have another motion to make, Your Worship.
Pardon?
I have another motion to make.
Another motion? Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
My math was correct. I'd like to everybody to turn to page 6, line 2 of the staff report. Currently, cost to the property owners for fees related to the closure of a grow operation are an average of $700 per address. The proposal was to raise that to $1,000. So I'm going to move that, I guess if you want to call this an F, that, let's figure out the wording here, the council adopt a fee of $700 for a special inspection permit to cover the total project staff costs or the project staff costs for 14 months. And you're going to have to fill in the blanks as to the numbers because I don't know what that means. In other words, there has been for the past year a cost to property owners. This was not a new fee. It was $700. The proposal was to raise it to $1,000. What we're doing here, or what those who voted in a way that I obviously disagreed with, have done is to transfer that burden from where it was before to back to the general taxpayer. I would emphasize what, I guess what I've said before and what Ms. Rogers has said. This came out of a real cry for help from East Side neighborhoods. They're not some of the neighborhoods that you folks live in. And you're not scared that somebody who lives next door to you is going to burn down their house, or the house is going to be burned down, or that there is some sort of thuggery or what have you happening next to you. You have not tried unsuccessfully through various legal means to find the landlord and persuade him or her to do something. I'm not saying that applies to all landlords, but certainly there are a number who own a number of these houses, and this is not fair. And in some cases, would it be fair to say, Inspector, that some of the organized groups that are in charge of growing this crop have in fact purchased a number of houses or have arranged for someone with whom they're connected to own and rent these properties?
We believe that's true.
All right. $1,000 is the cost of doing business in some ways, or $700. This is only if there's a problem with your premise. And it is perhaps a small disincentive to pursue this in a willful or blindly ignorant way. And I emphasize again the cry for help and the partnership that was initiated out of some of these community police offices with the police department. This was not something they thought up on their own to do. It was because they were begged to do it. Therefore, Your Worship, I would move the $700 to continue the current fee structure. The balance could be achieved from the $193,000 if that can be allocated thusly.
Okay, continue the $700 fee. Okay, we've got, next is Councillor Kennedy.
Your worship, I would absolutely agree with that. I would have supported the increase in fees, but I mean, it says clearly on page 6 that it is the city's current cost to landlords are less than half the cost of 1 month's rent. And we know clearly that many of these landlords are getting way more than that. So again, I think it's about civility and livability in communities. It's a community initiative. So if we turn this down and go for even less than what we're getting now, where are we going to make that up from? I mean, reserve or whatever. I mean, we should not go below what we currently have.
Okay, Councillor Pure.
Well, I'll go along with that. I don't mind, as I said before, the 700 plus the 400 plus the 190.
Plus 400.
Oh, I'm sorry, it includes the 400 plus the 193, and I think the rest of it can be absorbed from our license.
Okay.
If I could just clarify, if council is approving the continuation of the program, the belief is that means that the current fee structure will remain in place. So that, if you approve A, B, and C, that means we are still going to be charging the fee structure that is currently in place.
Okay,
The request was to increase
accept
it.
that? It's included in there, okay? So it's not going to be eliminated. Okay, so we don't need this extra motion then. Okay? Go ahead, Councillor Pure, any more?
I don't want to make an emotional speech as some people have made today, but listen, photo radar, did we have any local police officers, Vancouver police officers associated with photo radar?
I think it's
Yes, we did.
seconded.
Have they been reallocated elsewhere?
I assume they will be soon.
Why can't they, and I don't want to get involved in the police chief's work, but why can't they be allocated to this type of work?
Okay, we can assess that the chief, he's responsible for deployment, and I will carry that message to him. Yes, I
Because I
will.
think that, we're talking about policemen here.
Inspector Max Chalmers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, those people are coming back from the photo radar program. However, out of the 6, I believe it was, we had seconded to the program. 2 or 3 are going to retirement, and 2 are going to the traffic enforcement division.
Okay.
So they're already used up.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. Then Councillor, I think we've completed this now. The $700 is included there, so we're not having to discuss the motion of Councillor Clark. She's withdrawn. Okay. Can we move on to the next? Have you got something, very quickly?
Did you have something?
No. You're the last speaker. I'm not going to recognize any more speakers on this subject because we've voted on it.
I need some information because, Mr. Mayor, I may be able to make a motion that I think all of us would support. Is there a subset of landlords that have multiple houses? So that, in other words, if we said that a fee begins if you have 2 or 3 houses, does that identify the proportion of the grow-ups?
So you're saying if we rate a house and it turns out that this is a landlord, this is now their second grow?
Yes.
That there should be a different level of fee
Yes.
attached?
Yep.
If
Yeah,
council wishes,
yeah,
we could do that.
information on that?
We are tracking multiple owners. We've had a few now. At this point, what we've just done is called them in and have discussion with them and made certain requirements around it, but
Well,
we could do that.
maybe you could consider that in terms of a recommendation that we could do in the future.
Yeah,
If that turns out to be a pattern.
They could own 10 houses, have them in 10 different numbered companies, and then you can't do anything about it. So, okay, that's fine. We're going to carry on now. Thank you very much. No, I said I wouldn't recognize any more speakers on this. We've been going for over 2 hours, and it's the first item on the agenda. So I said I would not recognize any more. Moving on to RR2, which is the GVRD water services. And